Good morning, everyone. You're welcome. You're welcome to today's event, to today's webinar. My name is David. I'm the communications officer from PLAC. Once again, you welcome everyone who is already here. Apologize for the few minutes it took just to allow people to join in a bit. I'll just do a bit of housekeeping before I turn the meeting over to our program manager. Only panelists are able to speak. Only panelists have the options to unmute themselves and speak. So if at any point when it's time for questions, if you have any question, you just need to raise up your hand and you'll be given the opportunity to unmute yourself and speak. That being said, please join me and help me make welcome our program manager, Nkiru Uzodi.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Okay. Welcome. Okay, so we're using the Zoom webinar format, so it's only the speakers that we're going to be seeing their videos. We have all our panelists here. The participants are still logging in, but just so we're on time, or I will keep to time, I think we're just going to start while others join the webinar. So I am actually going to hand over to Terry Ikumi, who is going to be moderating this webinar. Terry, you are welcome, and I'm handing over to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Nkiru. I hope I could be heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good. So I think we can start this now. So good morning, everyone. I'm not sure where you've joined from, but it's 10:14 a.m. in Nigeria. So I'd like to welcome to this webinar, which is on sustaining momentum for the Special Seats Bill. There's a survey insights on level of public understanding and support. What this webinar seeks to do is explain quite a number of things. This webinar has been organized by the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center with support from the European Union. So I'll formally introduce myself again. I'm Terry Ikumi. I'm a journalist, and to break that down, I'm a parliamentary reporter. I've been doing this for at least 8 years now. I'm also the producer and host of Channels Television's Political Paradigm. It's an interview program on Nigerian politics and governance, as well as The Gavel, which is a show that chronicles the weekly activities of the Nigerian parliaments. With that said, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I have followed conversations on the Special Seats Bill since its inception in the 9th National Assembly, and I can confidently say that women's groups and CSOs have invested heavily in creating awareness on this bill. The challenge now is how can we push this into concrete commitments and translate it into votes in National Assembly, which is one of the reasons why we're here today for this webinar. PLAC, as a Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, and the European Union are hopeful that at the end of this webinar, full clarity will be given on the bill's objectives. Before I introduce the panelists, let me just state clearly what the objectives of this session are. It's first to share findings from the National Survey on Awareness and Support for the Special Seats Bill. It's also to facilitate expert panels discussions on clear advocacy asks that lawmakers and the public can understand and act on easily. It will also highlight that while awareness of this bill's content is low, there is strong public support for more women in governance, which reinforces the bill's overall objectives. And it's also to identify action points for advocacy and public mobilization around the bill. With that said, let me introduce you to the people that will make up the panel today. We'll talk about their bio quite later, but we'll have Dr. Chike Nwagu, who is the CEO of NOI Polls Limited. We'll also have Honorable Rimamde Shawulu, is a former member of the House of Representatives. Ms. Esther Hadiza Ijeaku is the CEO and Principal Consultant, Skill Hub Consulting. And of course, Laolo Laomi, who is a governance advisor to the European Union, will be sharing some goodwill messages with us today. With that said, I'd like to invite for our opening remarks the Deputy Executive Director of the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, Ms. Omolara Akinye.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my video for a second, then take it out. Okay, Terry already introduced me. I'm just going to be speaking briefly on behalf of the Executive Director and PLAC itself to welcome you to this webinar this morning. And let me just quickly go through a few points before we start this. To say that we're going to be sharing, Dr. Wang will be sharing some findings with us later on in the webinar and before all that discussions arises from the point that he shares. But let me quickly read through this. Distinguished speakers, partners, and participants, good morning and welcome. On behalf of the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar on sustaining momentum for the Special Seats Bill, survey insights on public understanding and support. PLAC has been at the forefront of the campaign for this bill, which seeks to create additional seats for women in the legislature since the Ninth Assembly, supporting the Constitutional Review Committee of both chambers in consideration of the bill. We have continued this work in the 10th Assembly, providing support to the committee to ensure it remains on the agenda. And we know what happened to it in the 9th Assembly. You know, at that time, let's say that it was still new in the 9th Assembly, but we all know that it has gathered so much momentum now. But we think that that momentum ought to be increased as well. So we are pleased with the progress made so far and commend the leadership of the 10th National Assembly for placing inclusive governance at the heart of its legislative agenda. The strong support for this bill by the Speaker, Right Honorable Abbas Tajuddin, together with his sponsorship by the Deputy Speaker, Right Honorable Benjamin Kalu, clearly signals institutional commitment at the highest levels, reinforced by recent remarks by the President of the Senate, that was on his return yesterday to Nigeria, committing to legislative action to improve women's representation. And we hope that that actually means, you know, support for the Special Seats Bill. What we are seeing today is renewed momentum. At the recently held zonal hearings and embarked upon by both houses, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, this bill featured prominently and was strongly promoted by many groups. We recognize and celebrate the hard work of the several organizations and partners who have sustained public attention and advocacy around this reform. Every effort counts at this stage of the bill. Pretty much straightforward to complement the work already being done by many and to determine together where best to focus our efforts next. Awareness is growing and support for women in politics is strong as well. But the real test lies in transforming that energy into citizens' demands on their representatives. You will agree with me that awareness alone, it's not enough. There are people who are going to vote on that day. So we need to go around to make that effort. But the real demands that translate into actual votes on the floor of the National Assembly, and that's what's most critical. The findings that will be shared today shows that although public awareness of the bill's proposal is not yet where it should be, there is strong public support for women in governance. This provides a solid foundation to build on. Our task now is to complement the efforts already made, you know, increase the tempo of our messaging, sharpen it, and focus our advocacy so that this momentum translates into legislative passage and ultimately presidential assent, which we will all be glad to celebrate. I thank our partners, speakers, and all of you for being here today. Your contributions in progressing this advocacy and making sure that this passes at the end of the day is quite critical and important. Together, we can turn data into action and move one step closer to a more inclusive and representative democracy. We sincerely thank the European Union for supporting our work on this and other partners, and today's webinar, especially today's webinar, which is supported by the European Union. I wish us all engaging and fruitful deliberations, and to say once again on behalf of PLAC, you are all warmly welcome to this webinar. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. That's the Deputy Executive Director of the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, Omolara Akinye. I think for anyone who's followed the conversation on the special seats bill, one thing you will agree is that the momentum in the 9th Assembly is a little different from now. There's been some improvements because there's some level of awareness now. I think lawmakers at the time didn't even understand what it was about, but now you find lawmakers who are even pushing the cause for this bill beyond the Deputy Speaker, who is the sponsor of this bill. But in all, there's still room for improvement. More awareness needs to be put out there. Let's move on. Let's invite the Program Manager, Democracy, Rule of Law and Gender Delegation of European Union to the Federal Republic of Nigeria and ECOWAS, Laolu Olaomi, for her goodwill message.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Okay, good. I see that you can hear me. Thank you for the kind invitation to be part of this very important meeting this morning. I think that the most critical parts that I wanted to articulate have already been sort of touched on by all of the people that have spoken already, so I'll keep it short by just mentioning maybe two things. One centers on why the European Union is quite interested in seeing this bill succeed. And another would be a word of encouragement, a word of caution, as we move ahead in this process, particularly as we look forward to seeing the National Assembly reconvene after their recess, and the events that we hope would translate into the sort of realization or actualization of the bill, so to speak. On the part of the European Union, we feel that inclusion is extremely important. It is extremely important because no true development can be achieved without everyone who is part of society, so to speak, without everyone feeling heard or feeling like they have a voice in influencing matters that affect them. So inclusion is key. And as we can see from Nigeria's huge population and demography, that women are very central to this conversation. So it bears no reasoning that the push for women's political participation and more participation in, decision making that involves them, involves their well-being, their livelihoods, would be something that we will really want to align ourselves with. Women's political participation is critical. We believe that it is essential for sustainable development as well as the development of society as a whole. This is not something that we take for granted. It's what we try to practice even within the EU institutions ourselves, and is reflected in the composition in leadership position within the EU as well. We can see, and several studies have shown, how this has really translated into better performance within the economy and even better lot for the population at large. So with this in mind, we have been very clear that this is something that we would like to partner with the government on, and support civil society organizations and other key stakeholders in sort of raising these issues, and also making sure that there is a bill that is eventually passed into law that allows for the kind of representation that we feel Nigerian women and the Nigerian society deserve. So we will continue to work with like-minded institutions and stakeholders to ensure that this conversation is something that is not sidelined in any way. We have talked about how this conversation and this bill has progressed from the 9th Assembly. We thank PLAC and other colleagues that have worked very strongly on this. I think so many lessons were learned in the 9th Assembly in terms of how this process should be taken forward, and how consultations and stakeholder engagement should go in order to fulfill the objectives that we are all seeking. In the 10th Assembly, we have seen a lot of momentum that has been built in this regard, and we would like to continue to encourage these conversations and this sort of coalition building that is happening. However, it is important that there is strong coordination across all stakeholders to ensure that we are, careful in our messaging, and we are working very strongly together to actualize the vision that all of the people working on this are trying to realize, whether it's in terms of the research that we are doing and how we are carefully curating and disseminating that research, and how we are allowing that research to inform the kind of engagements that we are making. This is very critical for the success of the bill, and we hope that stakeholders across board will continue to work together to ensure that the level of coordination around this bill is such that further advances the objectives that we have set. So having said this, we are very pleased that this piece of research was undertaken, and we hope that the results from the research would be taken forward in conversations that move beyond this particular event for which we are all gathered, but will influence broader conversations and discussions of either women's groups or within the National Assembly itself, so that at the end of the day, when the conversation goes to voting, that we will see a different result that we saw under the 9th Assembly. I'd like to thank everybody who has come to join this conversation today, and I hope that the deliberations will be fruitful. I also hope that this will be a good platform for us to raise any concerns and questions that we have, and further build consensus around the importance of this bill and of speaking with one voice. So thank you again for the kind invitation to attend this webinar, and I look forward to seeing the very robust engagements that will flow from here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Laulu. Laulu Olaomi is the Program Manager, Democracy, Rule of Law and Gender, Delegation of the European Union to the Federal Republic of Nigeria and ECOWAS. Thank you so much for that. I think one of the things that we can all agree on is that quite a number of positive comments have been received on this bill, because many believe that it will definitely promote gender equality and empower women. We know that also it will increase women's representation. It will eliminate discriminatory practices, which is something that is really a concern for just about everyone, male and female, in Africa and indeed Nigeria. And Nigeria will be setting good standards for the rest of Africa to follow. We must look at a positive impact on development that this bill will bring to the table as well. But to do that, we need to understand the level of exposure that this bill has got and the sort of reception it's received. So let's invite the Executive Director of the National Orientation, NOI Polls, I beg your pardon, the Dr. Chikin Wagu, to give us a presentation of the findings from the surveys conducted.
Thanks, Terry. Good morning, everyone. And can someone just confirm that I'm I'm audible. Thank you, Terry. So my name is Dr. Chike Wangu. I'm the CEO of NOI Polls, and I'll be taking the next 7 minutes thereabout to run through the poll findings that we did that was commissioned by the Policy Legal Advocacy Center. And we'll be looking generally at the public awareness and understanding of the Special Seats Bill among Nigerians. And just a moment to share my screen so that we can talk through the slides.
Okay.
All right, please can someone just say yes, I can see your screen.
Yeah, yes, we can see your screen.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. So just to talk us through what I'll be going through, looking at an overview of the survey, the aim and objectives, the methods and findings, and then just with a passing conclusion. Again, this is a very quick run through. The full survey would be available on design and implementation of evidence-based public awareness engagement activities that address the needs and concerns of diverse citizens. In terms of our method, like I mentioned, this survey was conducted in June 2025, conducted through computer-assisted telephone interviews, and we spoke to a total of 3,000, a little above 3,000 Nigerians aged 18 years and above. And it covered the whole country with disaggregation at geopolitical zone level. It's important to say that the survey was conducted in the 4 Nigerian languages, or rather the language of preference of the respondents, be it English, Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, or Pidgin. And that participation was voluntary, of course, but we made sure that this is representative of adult Nigerians. And I'll dive straight to the findings, and the findings are grouped into 7 categories. We look at, just want to give us a little bit of background of the people that we spoke to, and gives you an idea of the people that are responding to the survey. I would also be now looking at the results specifically on level of awareness, accessibility of information, knowledge of the key provisions of the bill, attitude and opinions, trust in institutions, as well as civic engagement and participation. A summary of the people that we spoke to, you can see from the chart that we spoke to a representative group of Nigerians, 51% male, 49% females. We did have about 6% of people that didn't complete secondary school. Geopolitical zone is representative of Nigerian population distribution, and the majority of people that we spoke to were self-employed or civil servants. With regards to urban and rural, we had an almost even split among urban and rural respondents. Interestingly, and this is of importance, when the people that we spoke to, 59% of them had a low household income of less than 80,000 naira. This is just to give us a feel of the categories of people that we spoke to. Moving on to the findings, like the previous speakers have spoken, what we found from our poll was a low awareness of the Special Seats bill across all demographic categories. Only 9% of the people that we spoke to had heard about the Special Seats bill, again, without any distinction across the different categories. We went ahead to ask those that had heard of the bill what they think is the main purpose of the Special Seats bill. Majority of them that have heard of it said it was either to increase women's representation in government, or to promote gender equality in politics, or to empower women in decision making. Other options included to address historical underrepresentation of women. What that kind of tells us is that the people that we spoke to that had heard of the bill had a fair understanding of the purpose of the bill. For those that have heard the bill, wanted to find out.
Dr. Wangu, please permit me to come in here. I think you need to slow down a bit so that people can assimilate all the things you say.
All right, thanks, Terry. All right, thanks, Terry. Okay. So for the people that have heard of the bill, we wanted to know what the primary source of information, as in where did they hear the bill from, about the bill from. A majority that heard it from radio, television, and Facebook. family and friends were the top 4 options that were mentioned. We kind of felt it was interesting to kind of look into some of the specific demographics to kind of understand, should we try to create messaging around the bill? What is the best means to deliver? So looking into the different age groups, and for clarity, we had 3 categories of age groups. We had those aged 18 to 35 years, those aged 35 to 60 years, and those older than 61 years. Looking at their source of information, you find, interestingly, that for the older age group, majority of them, the source of information was radio. And what was radio, and of course, television. But interestingly, for the younger age group between 18 and 35, we found that Facebook and then word of mouth, either through family and friends, were a good source of information for them. Across the other media platforms, Twitter was a more common source of information for the younger age group as well. In summary, the findings for the primary source of information showed that people access information from very diverse means, but we can't do away from the traditional media of radio and television. Although we've said that people were, familiarity with the bill wasn't really high. However, on a scale of 1 to 5, the majority of people really reported that the bill is highly important, with as much as 87% viewing it as highly important. And this support cuts across all the zones at relative frequencies, but generally, when you look at the positive support for the bills, they're very high across. Understandably, we do have more women that favor the importance of the bill than men, but that is expected. Interestingly, it's important to point out that the view of the importance of the bill was lowest in the Southwest geopolitical zone, if we want to compare that across all the other zones. So one further, because it's one thing to have heard of the bill, but wanted to be sure whether people had heard about the bill were aware of the key provisions that are in the bill. And what we found that even among those that have heard about the bill, only 19% were aware of the proposed number of special seats for women in the National and States House of Assembly. This was higher for urban dwellers than rural dwellers. Interestingly, it was also a bit higher for males, as in the men were more aware of the number of special seats for women. There wasn't much difference across the geopolitical zones, and the people with higher level of income were more aware of the number of seats than the people with lower income. Interestingly, we found that those with no education or completed or just completed primary school were a bit more aware than the other education categories. So in general, what this kind of tells us is that as the information is building, that different groups of people, awareness of the content of the bill, the specific contents of the bill was a bit mixed across the different demographics. The next question we asked was to ask people, what do you think are the benefits of the special seats bill? And again, for those that were aware of the bill, the major benefits that they recorded were increased representation of women in government, more inclusive decision-making, and improved policy for women and children. Again, shows that people do understand the importance of the bill or what the bill is intending to achieve. Now we dived into attitudes and opinions of the bill, and despite the low awareness, so the point is, regardless of whether people were aware at the point when we asked them, do you support the special bill? 92% of people that we spoke to supported the special seats bill. And this was consistent across gender, age, education, location, or income level. So this is reinforcing the speakers that have spoken that there is general support, both from the general public and the legislators in terms of the special seats bill. And when we dive into reasons for support or opposition for the 8% that said they don't support the bill, we kind of, the major reasons cited for supporting the bill include enhancing women's representation in decision-making, promoting gender equality, empowering women in politics, and then, of course, that it supports democratic principles. Whereas for those that didn't support the bill, their major reasons were they believe that it was not necessary and it may not be effective, and that they prefer merit-based selection. And 14% did say that women lacked capacity, whereas 8% mentioned religion and cultural reasons for not supporting the special seats bill. And then moving on to ask people, how important do they think that women are represented in government? Again, a very significant percent of adult Nigerians believe that women should be represented adequately in government, and it cuts across all demographics, whether it's urban or rural setting, or whether it's from the low or high income households, or even across gender. Again, this buttresses the point of general support for the special seats bill. We want further to ask people who they feel, or which institution or group do they think will show much better support for the bill. And public trust in institutions that can champion the bill was split among government agencies, community leaders, civic organizations, as well as religious organizations. The interesting thing there is that all these four arms were mentioned evenly across all demographic groups, though at different rates. For example, women felt community leaders will show better support than government agencies, while the men felt that the government agencies will show better support. When we looked at the different regions, the Northwest and Northeast identify civic organizations as the institutions that spoke to across all demographics had participated in a forum, debate, or consultations about the special seats bill. If you look across the zones, it's pretty much the same. I do also want to say that in as much as 1%, that's still a significant number, and we do hope that there is some purposive progress that comes from participating or in this forums, that it can lead into dissemination of the information, as we found the sources of information that word of mouth from family and friends is also a strong way of communicating information across. For those that had participated in the forums, we wanted to find out which organizations were responsible for these efforts, and 22% of the people that attended the forums attributed the efforts to non-governmental organizations, 19% to women empowerment organizations, and 10% to community meetings and neighbors. Quite a number, 16% also couldn't recall who was responsible for the forum, but non-NGOs, women empowerment organizations, community meetings, and neighborhoods were the main people that were identified to conduct these forums. It's important to point this out to just kind of refresh our minds that despite the fact that people expect that government agencies were the ones that should be supporting the bill, the forums that most people attended were either by non-governmental organizations, women empowerment organizations, or community meetings and neighborhoods. And then finally, our closing question was to ask people, in their opinion, what do they think is the most effective approach for getting public support for this bill? And nearly half of all Nigerians feel that public awareness campaigns are the most effective approach to garnering support for the special seats bill. Other things like social media mobilization, education, and sensitization were mentioned, but the point is that generally everybody feels that we need to create more awareness and campaigns around the special seats bill to enable people to support the bill. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that the survey findings demonstrate that despite the reported low awareness, and this was around June, of the special seats bill, there is widespread support for women's representation in government. And we have as much as 91% of respondents deeming it important, which indicates a favorable environment for advancing inclusive governance. We also found from our polls that traditional media platforms such as radio and television remain key sources of information about the special seats bill, and their relevance in public awareness efforts can't be understated. However, it's important to say that Facebook and word of mouth were important sources of information for the younger demographics. We also want to point out that despite the strong support for the bill, citizen participation in related forums and consultations notably low, with only 1% of respondents reporting attendance. This highlights the need for more inclusive and accessible engagement strategies. Respondents identified government agencies, community leaders, civic organizations, and religious organizations as institutions that should support the special seats bill, with their public trust in these institutions rated highly. So we can't really move forward without engaging these 4 categories of institutions to be able to push the awareness on this bill forward. And then finally, we do hope that these insights provide a clear basis for targeted intervention that will potentially increase awareness, trust, and participation in efforts to promote women's representation through the special seats bill. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Chike Nwagu, the Chief Executive Officer of NOI Polls. Let me just give a quick rundown of who he is so you understand the quality of the work he's done here. He's got over 13 years experience in data management, consulting, research, monitoring, and evaluation. He's a medical doctor with an MPH and Dr. PH, that's Master's in Doctorate degrees in Public Health from Johns Hopkins University. He has overseen major national surveys and performance-based financing initiatives, as well as previously led health analytics work for the Health Strategy and Delivery Foundation. And under his leadership, NOI Polls continues to inform policy and advocacy across sectors in Nigeria and West Africa. Doctor, thank you so much. Well, before you, there are 2 things I'd like you to perhaps just run over again, just to be clear. Talk to us about the awareness based on regions and the reasons why certain people say they may not support the bill. Could you go over those again?
All right. Thanks, Terry. So again, in terms of awareness, what we found was only 9% of the people that we spoke to were aware of the special seats bill. A little bit of higher awareness in the north than in the south, with 15% more in the northeast and northwest being aware, whereas we had the lower levels of 4 to 6% across the south. However, when we look across educational level and urban rural settings and even socioeconomic earnings, there wasn't that much difference. But generally, when we look at the regions, the North seemed a bit more aware than the South, generally, with regards to awareness of the special seats bill. And then for the respondents that did not support the special bills, the major reasons why they pointed this out was they felt it was not necessary, and they felt it might not be effective, and they kind of felt it might be against merit-based selection. But 14% of those that were not in support did mention that they believe women lack the capacity to represent constituents. And then there were those that also cited religion and cultural reasons for not supporting the bill. Again, some of these reasons could just be lack of understanding or of the contents of the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor, once again. And that was a very good presentation. I believe that our panelists will pick up from there. Some of the things you've said are highly commendable, knowing that this survey was conducted using local language is a very commendable thing, considering some of these difficult to reach areas and the literacy levels as well. I also think it's interesting that we have an almost even distribution of male and female, and finding that more men seem to be in support of this bill or be aware of this bill than women, which is quite interesting, just suggests the level of work that needs to be done. And I also think that there's quite a number of groups of people that need to be carried along for the success of this bill. 2 of those groups majorly would have to be the political class who can influence the passage of this bill, and then the women who would need to participate or be more, for whom the awareness will be created to understand that there is now a platform to give you sort of an improvement from what used to be. So I think it's really commendable. I don't know if anyone has questions for Dr. Wago before we go into our panel sessions. I think I saw some hands up already. Chikelu wants to ask a question, I believe. So I'm just going to allow her to do that. Please go ahead, Chinelu. You can unmute there and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Oh yeah, good. So I have like 3 questions. So the first is I'm kind of like surprised that the geopolitical region with less support for the bill is the Southwest. That's just weird. Consider that one would expect it would be the North. Why is that so? And then the second is I've always wondered, because since the student started, I wonder what women themselves are doing, especially to prepare for this special seats bill. Because yes, we are creating the special seats for them, but it's also their own prerogative to make sure that those who merit the positions are the ones that are going to occupy it. Right. So is there, like, when speaking to, is there any way that you spoke to like people that can kind of ensure that women are doing their own part to ensure that when those bills are accomplished, that there are people who are qualified to enter the seats? And then I don't understand why there should be more men who support the bill than the women. Is it because the men are more, or men who know about them are those who are already in the political circle, or is just that generally women were not given, there were not enough women respondents to answer? Because I think the respondents to the research were like, they have more higher men than women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, Doctor, you might want to respond to the questions that the parts of the question that apply directly to you, and probably Nkiru would respond as well, because the concerns around the geographic distribution of the respondents very important. The level of awareness which she talked about, because I also would have thought that the Southwest would have a higher level of awareness. Dr. Wango, please.
All right. Thanks, Terry. I'll start with the first question on finding a bit surprising that the Southwest had the lowest level of so I wouldn't use the word support, but when we asked them how important do you think the bill is, that's where the Southwest was the lowest group that responded in the affirmative. Again, I do want to point out that it's only about 13% that responded negatively. What we're trying to say was, when it came to considering it important as very important, the Southwest was a bit lower. Again, this is my own opinion, not necessarily based on the findings, but sometimes you kind of how society moves forward in terms of inclusive government means different things to different people, right? So there is that whole push around, have we gone past the point where we think about inclusion as a core requirement, or should we, if we believe that we put everything on merit, then the merit in itself should be able to take care of inclusion? If we feel that our society has advanced to the level that there isn't really any barriers towards certain areas. So in a sense, in some way it makes sense that if we say the more developed an area is, the more they believe that making specific quotas might not necessarily be the way forward. Again, this is my own opinion, not necessarily based on any of the findings. Again, on the question of why do more men support the bill than women, it could just still be an awareness thing, because even when we asked those that are ahead about the bills, what were the specific provisions for the bill, we found more men being knowledgeable in the contents of the bill than the women, and maybe that's why they have more support. But if we are on your question on what the women are doing, if you go back to the slide that spoke about those that have attended forums and consultations, you find out that women empowerment groups were one of the people that conducted those programs. So I think there is some activity coming from women in preparing themselves for the bill. But I think the major takeaway is that in as much as people are aware of the bill, the specific contents or the stipulations of the bill need a bit more awareness around that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Kira, would you like to say something about us?
Yes, I
Oh,
think
go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I think Dr. Chike already answered that question, but I think you are referring to the question on political readiness of women. So this bill is actually being promoted as a complementary measure. It's not meant to be like a replacement of, should I say, planning and prepping for a political career. And there are lots of women groups that are actually doing work already on this. You know, women are at the forefront of this campaign, but even before the campaign for these seats began, you know, for years and decades, you've had women groups providing mentorship, training, capacity building, you know, training on communications, political skills building. So you have different NGOs, CSOs, and women groups who are doing that. And, you know, I remember something Honorable Nkoyoto said. She used to be a member of the House of Reps. She said that the problem is not that there are no women in politics, but that the challenge is transforming the energy of women in politics into winning seats. So that is what this bill is about. It's meant to actually help bridge that gap. So I believe that there are women who are capable and qualified and who are ready, but are having problems getting nominations. And so I don't believe, you know, there'll be a challenge finding people who are capable and who are competent to contest and occupy these seats. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else with a question or comment for Dr. Chikinwagu? Okay, if we find any hand, we will take them. But for now, I think we can go into our panel session and have a full discussion on the findings so far. Dr. Nwagu, I'd like to thank you very much once again for your time and presentation.
Thank you, Terry.
All right, so let's go into our panel session. Now, we will have two panelists. One of them is a former member of the House of Representatives, Honorable Remande Shaulu. He's now joined us. He is a former member of the House from Taraba State. He served as the House of Representatives member for the Donga Usa Takum constituency in Taraba State from 2015 to 2023. And besides his political career, he is also an experienced journalist. He's an author, an entrepreneur with roots in media and publishing. His legislative and communications background positions him as a strong voice on political advocacy and reform. Honorable, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Also, we have Ms. Esther Hadiza Ijeaku. She's the CEO and Principal Consultant, Skill Hub Consulting. She is the founder and principal consultant. She's also a development consultant in Abuja. She's a former senior project manager of the BBC Media Action Nigeria, a gender and strategic communications expert, and project management professional with more than 20 years of experience in the development sector, working across gender, human rights, health, inclusion, democracy, and governance. She's known for her training, facilitation, and strategic communication work. She specializes in empowering civil society organizations to achieve sustainable impact. Thank you so much, Ms. Ijeaku, for joining us as well.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's go into this conversation and quickly get both your reactions to Dr. Nwagu's presentation on the survey regarding the special seats bill. I know you came here prepared with some of your materials to give an overview, but let's get your reaction to this survey because it's been revealed for the first time here. Let me begin with women first, they say. Esther, please.
Okay, good morning again, Terry and Honorable. Thank you so much, Dr. Chike, for the presentation, and the participants. PLAC, thank you also for the opportunity. Just looking at or hearing Dr. Chike talk about the findings, there are some things that didn't really surprise me. And one of the things is the low awareness of the bill. And one would say, why isn't it a surprise? I don't think this is different from a lot of things that happen in And I don't know whether it stems from apathy, it stems from that feeling of helplessness of not, I don't have a say, I can't influence it, I can't decide, so why should I stress myself? That's looking at it from the perspective or imagining what a typical Nigerian will be thinking when you're talking about the bill. And also not appreciating how this bill will improve our lives as individuals and society in general. In change management, there's something called what's in it for me. In terms of awareness, yes, you may know that something exists, but usually interests increase, and therefore you can get momentum when people are able to identify how this benefits them or how this will improve their lives. I'm not sure, maybe looking at the way we respond to our representatives. Yes, there's definitely the group that is very interested in the workings and what they're doing, the legislature that they're pushing. But to be honest, a significant number of citizens don't pay much attention to it because maybe they don't see their role in influencing policies or legislature. So that in particular did not surprise me. And maybe just responding, just because Chinelo raised it earlier, she talked about the Southwest. I think in the Southwest, you see more opportunities for women in a lot of areas. So it Bill and white and not step opportunity for them, which is not the same thing. So looking at the wider context is also critical. I think that when people say they would support it, we also have to remember that people's decisions and what they do at the end of the day is not just their personal preference. It is also influenced at different levels. So you are influenced by your family. So just a simple example is that there are some things I would do if I was alone, but once my family is around, I may act differently. So this is where that social and behavior change begins to come in to recognize that there are different levels of influence that people or pressure that people face when they're making decisions or when they're making certain commitments. So we're happy that there's a general support, but also the context, the environment should be encourage people to act on that goodwill that they already have towards having women in positions of leadership. I don't think I'm different from many Nigerians that leading up to elections, leading up to primaries, we hear a lot of promises. I'm a woman, obviously. So we hear, oh, this is the year for the woman. This is the cycle that women are going to stand out and all of that. And we get to the primaries and we face the song changes. And it's more around, don't worry, appointive positions are there. You know, it's not safe. There's a lot of violence. Even your family will be pressuring you. It's not, as young people will say, it's not that deep. Why are you putting yourself forward and putting everybody at risk for this? Why don't you wait? You get an appointed position. So we have to look at it like big picture to say, okay, this is why there's unawareness, yes, but even though there's goodwill, how can we convert it? Nkiru said it, that how do we convert some of that interest, you know, and get women's names on the ballots? How can we get political parties to realize that having these extra seats for women does not affect the already existing seats that are in the House? How do we get them to understand that also those women are part of their political parties. So it's leverage. For those that do not have representation already, this is an opportunity to fight for additional seats and all of that. So boiling it down to what's in it for me and having a consensus around the HB 1349 and what it represents at every level, that there's a women's constituency that is not given enough voice, that the voice of women needs to be amplified and women need to be represented by women also in the legislative houses, whether it's at the national level or it's at the sub-national level. So I would imagine that a lot of people here are working in the sector, but always remember that what you know might not be what other people that are outside of the sector, they may not be aware of what you're doing, right? So we have to take steps to go where they are. The research has done a good job of letting us know that people listen to radio, they watch TV, there's word of mouth. So where they are is where we should go. I remember during the campaigns for Ready to Run, Not Too Young to Run, forgive me, they went where everybody was. We don't hope that people will find them where we want to go. We identify where they are, and we've heard it today, and we go where they are and give out messaging and information that is useful, that is simple. It benefits no one to have information that is unclear or doesn't give next steps of action. What can I do? So what? So this research, I think, just opens our eyes and gives us a big dose of reality about what exists now, what opportunities exist, what are those entry points that we have,
Right.
how we can take advantage of those opportunities from the low-hanging fruits to the more difficult areas, leveraging on those influential gatekeepers and leaders that have been identified. They've made our work kind of easy if we just sit down and plan to make sure that this legislation comes through. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Honorable Ramam Deshaola now and get your thoughts on the survey which you just saw and heard.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Sometimes when I hear about the legislature and the attitude that people have towards what happens in the legislature, I really think that we have failed to look at what we need to know as the connection, the disconnect between government generally and the populace. It does appear to me that from the year 2000, when I went to the National Assembly as a legislative aide, I've had this situation where the National Assembly members are really cut off from the public, not because they don't want to be part of the public, but because the public, as at 1999 to 2000, just saw the National Assembly as another added bondage for the populace. Many did not even realize the importance of the National Assembly. They just saw them as people who go to Abuja and so forth. I remember a member from Bauchi was lamenting at the foyer of the National Assembly. I think that was at the 2003, and I think he said he was not going to run for election. Because for all the 4 years that he was in the National Assembly, they were forced to open constituency offices that had to be inspected by other government agencies to ensure that they were set up. He said all through the period that the 4 years, was ending the 4 years, no member from his constituency, no individual got to his office to complain to him about any bills or motion or the things that are related to his work as a legislator, all that people were concerned about were, how do you pay my children's school fees? I'm going to get married. I need this, I need that. And that was all that he had. He said he was tired. He was not going to do it. They were forced to set constituency offices. And even now, I think we still have constituency offices. Nobody visits those offices. Nobody goes to do any suggestions. What that suggests to my mind is the general disconnection between government and people. People don't connect the activities of government to their welfare. People see government as agency that generates money. Perhaps maybe when these tax reforms begin to take effect and people are forced to take money from their pockets, then they will now do that connection. And that brings me to the very issue of this question of political awareness. Generally, people don't bother about what happens in government in Nigeria. It's only when things get really bad, and even then, you just have episodic and temporary response to them. And within a few days or a few weeks, everybody forgets and people begin to adjust to the hit that they have received. And that is how things have been going on in this country. I remember in the 8th Assembly, we voted on this same bill, if I'm not mistaken. We did the same in the 9th Assembly. And true, many people, what people say, including those who claim to support the bill, is different from what they do when they are asked to go to vote. Because I was in the chambers 2 times when people who stood up to support the bill, speak for the cameras, voted minutes after or some weeks after against the bills that they spoke for. Because we have a system in Nigeria that politics is just some noise that you make, get people around it. What you do is different. People are not being held to account. Even if you even check, I doubted whether many of these people, members of the National Assembly, at their constituency offices have been visited by women groups who are demanding that, or who make demands on them to vote for these bills. You may discover that the efforts that are being made at the top, at the high level here. At the local level, where you have constituency offices where people can go in groups as women groups or cooperative groups to confront legislators, you may be shocked to find out that at those levels, nothing has been done. And then maybe, I don't know, on the issue of women, Southwest and the North, people being more politically aware. Actually, all through the history of Nigeria, the North has been more politically aware and active than other parts of the country. And in the North, there are some sections that are more proactive, and we've had women activists. Women voting in the North was a fight that had to be done, undertaken. And women groups in the North really fought in the First Republic to ensure that women even had some basic rights in the North. And so you'll be shocked to see that some states in the North have been consistently sending more females to the National Assembly than even those from the South. And in places like Adamawa, have even sent women who traditionally you argue don't come from those areas. They just married into those areas. They've voted them into the National Assembly because those areas appear to be more receptive to I don't know, but that is a subject of research where that will happen. But a lot of opening in the North has been taking place. Women have been playing very active role. True, it may be because in the South, it could be argued that maybe in the South, like our first presenter said, it's because you have women everywhere. I think almost you could argue that too for the Southeast, but sometimes you need deliberate actions, like the actions that took place in Rivers State, where it was the political decision that every local government that did not have a woman as his chairmanship candidate had to bring a female to be the vice chairman. That was a deliberate political action. And it also be nice for deliberate political actions to be taken in terms of getting women representation.
Right.
But I don't know whether I should go ahead to talk on the issue that I was asked to speak about to save time.
Okay, just 1 second. I just wanted us to initially get an overview of what your thoughts are. So let me go back to Esther first off so that she could talk to us about the objectives of this bill. Break it down for us, because we have we don't only have panelists, we have randoms attending this so that they can understand what exactly this bill is about. So if we could go into the details of this bill to understand what the main objectives are, and then we can come back to Honorable Shawulu to speak on what he was asked to speak on.
Well, definitely I can talk about the information that I have on the bill, my understanding of the bill, particularly the purpose, which is to increase the representation of women in the National Assembly and also at the subnational level, which is at the state level, having extra seats, and it's a temporary measure which will run for 4 cycles. That's about 16 years, ensuring that each state has an extra seat that is for women only. And we ensure that women only compete and ensure that women are represented in the assemblies, the houses of assembly. We will have 36 plus the FCT in the House, the same thing for the National Assembly, and then 3 representatives in each state House of Representatives, which kind of aligns with the senatorial zones that we have. So we're expecting that the presence of women is not just going to benefit women, it's going to benefit democracy, it's going to benefit society in general, because women bring a different perspective. We constitute half of the population of Nigeria and deserve a seat at the table. So where that is not happening for whatever reason, because we're not coming from a place of equality. If we're honest about it, there is pre-existing inequality, whether it's in terms of access to opportunities, education, financial empowerment, leadership, even how we're perceived in leadership positions. There is a lot of disadvantage that women are facing in terms of barriers. I think you mentioned, Terry, when you made your first comment, you talked about barriers that already exist. So this is one way of not giving women an advantage, but giving women a fair chance to be heard, a fair chance to lead, a fair chance to contribute to the legislations or policies and decisions that are being made that affect them, their families, and society in general. In terms of the readiness of women, I don't think, I know somebody asked a question about that. I am fully convinced that there are women who are able and very competent to run for those offices, to be representatives of their states and the women constituency in Nigeria. And this is not different. It's not something novel, because it has happened in other countries, whether it's Rwanda or Kenya, Uganda. There are other countries that have tried it and have benefited and can share stories about how the dynamics changed, the priorities changed, and there was a closing of that gap. I think Honorable talked about there's a gap that exists between the leaders and the people that they represent. There was a closing of that gap in those societies, which we hope to also benefit from. A lot of times people say, oh, why can't women, and even from the research, that it should be merit-based. What does that mean if you don't even have the opportunity to compete? It's almost like saying there's a competition and your name is not even on the ballot in the first place. So how do you even compete in the first place? So elections or getting representation does not start on the day of election. It starts long before that day. It starts long before. And I think this bill in particular will give women the opportunity to be seen, to be heard, to show what they can do, and also to lead. And over the 4 cycles, it is expected that people would have tasted and seen, I should say, that women are able to lead and are able to give the same leadership as men. This is not about women can do better. No. We have the good and the bad among men. We have the good and the bad among women. Women Absolutely. Are human men, but deserve an opportunity to also get in there and contribute. We want to contribute.
Thank you so much. I understand that you'd also be speaking on some communication gaps and more, which I'll come to you on. Well, let's hear from the National Assembly's perspective now. Former lawmaker, Honorable Shaulu, has been speaking with us. Let's hear the challenges of legislative advocacy and coalition building. Let's get his insights and during his time in National Assembly on why the bill failed in the 9th Assembly and what moves lawmakers. Talk about clarity of the proposal. We'll look at how lawmakers see this bill, what lawmakers must see exactly, and what this bill proposes. So let's get Honorable Shaul back now. Honorable.
Okay, thank you very much for having me back. Let me start. There are a few things that people need to know about the legislature and how it operates around the world. First of all, the legislator is a person like any other person with a lot of issues that may be bothering him. And so when you are doing anything, especially in our system, you have to deal with the fact that you are dealing with someone who has different interests and different issues that are bothering him. And one of the issues that affected this bill, in my opinion, in the last assemblies is that the communication was very poor. I don't think people actually understood, even me, what it was all about. The communication, you are going to have extra seats, and many legislators at that time asked the question, where are you going to get these seats from? Of course, in the current bill, this have been clarified to the extent that we are told that, okay, you will be able to have 1 seat per state. Then in communicating that in the state, how are you going to have that seat rotate among different? So it's actually a very difficult proposition that whoever is talking to people would need to really be sure of what he's talking about, because people need to understand. You're asking someone to go and cast a vote. And what if he casts the vote and tomorrow you say that it's his seat that you are going to give up for the woman? What do you want him to do? Those are issues that the first thing I want to speak about, therefore, is that we need to communicate the details and specific nature of the proposals that are being put forward. In some climes that we've spoken about, we are talking in some climes, like some of the countries that were mentioned, we are talking about having political parties bring up lists, talking about proportional representation. And so we need to define, in my opinion, need to define how, when you are communicating to people, you need to define. And you don't expect, like I said, someone to accept a proposal or pass a proposal that may threaten him as an individual. Having said that, I think we need to look at some general issues that, in my opinion, will help in engaging legislators. The second thing to say, apart from the communication, is that we'll need to really get the general public to see the importance of this proposition. That is why I think the issue of this public opinion, the issue that has been brought up about awareness, of course, it's a small group of people that has been surveyed, but generally, if you look at some of the bills, some of the constitutional provisions that were passed in the previous legislative sessions, they had to do with issues that took storm. Let me use the phrase, issues that became talking points across the whole country, like they're not too young to run. So you make the public on this campaign. I know a lot has been done, but I think there still needs a lot more needs to be done to make it become a talking point among all people that are interested, or even those that are not interested in talking about it, even those that are not interested in it need to be brought in to be interested in it. It need to take over Nigerian airspace the way we had the Not Too Young bill happen. Even though we've seen a lot of women protests and the rest of them, but in my own opinion, I may be wrong, I don't think that they have taken storm of Nigeria the way we had the Not Too Young to Run bill did in the past. And thirdly, sorry, in trying to get legislators to take decisions, one of the things that needs to be done, like I said in my introductory statement, will be to ensure that we get people in their constituencies to be interested. This cannot be an Abuja matter. All legislators, federal legislators, have constituency offices, or they have places in their constituencies where they hold meetings, where people meet with them. It's not enough to go in group and do protest at the National Assembly. It will be good if at grassroots levels, women groups, the local women groups, including the faith-based groups, are mobilized. Before you mobilize them, you will need to convince them about the correctness of what you want to do. And when these legislators go home for Easter, for Christmas, for Salah, or any of those functions, they need to be repeatedly visited. Why I'm talking about legislators is that they are the ones that will take the vote. And when they are taking the vote, it's between them and what they believe. And it's not going to be a yes or no vote. What I mean by it's not going to be a voice vote. They will have to vote using the equipment, voting equipment that is in the chambers. Every vote is recorded. You will be able to know who voted for what and who did not vote for what. It's possible to know them. And so this mobilization needs to go beyond Abuja into the very small constituencies and meetings that these legislators are holding. And what is the message that you need to send? I think one of the mistakes that we may one of the things that we need to speak about on the positive side would be to call attention, I agree, to what has happened in some countries. Of course, the countries that we talk about mainly are in Africa and in the third world. And in talking about them, we have to be circumspect because if you meet someone who is very intellectual, he will call your attention to the fact that there have been a large number of women who have been very widely successful as presidents and prime ministers, even a wartime prime minister of Israel. And these people did not have to go through any form of reserve seats. They fought for themselves. So in trying to talk about this, you need to also, whoever is talking to people need to be aware that the people may have some counter information, some information that will be correct, that you cannot just write them off and say, no, they are not serious, they don't like women. Because there are some people that will also be bringing up issues that they believe are right. Let me give you an example. We were doing the PDP constitution a few years ago, and we got to where we said we should agree with President Jonathan's 35% quota for women. We did agree. We took out 35%. And then we went to the youth came. They said they wanted a percentage. What was the percentage? Okay, let's give them 10%. They said they are the biggest demographic. Give them 10%. Now you have 45. Then people with disability came. You have to give them their own quota. Their own quota is another 10%. Now you have 55% reserved. The one that is left in the basket for competition is now a minority. Of course, everybody laughed about it, and it was difficult to agree. You had to reduce the figures and walk through, because these are legitimate questions that you meet when you go around. In talking to the legislators too, another point I would like to is to appeal to their honor and tell them the fact that if they do this thing, they will be helping their daughter, their sisters for a short time. It's not that they are replacing the competitive electoral positions that are available. Of course, we've had we've had a woman Speaker of the House of Representatives, even though she was unfairly removed from office. And it was so sad that on the last day of the parliamentary session, that seventh assembly, they all stood up to apologize to her because they removed her for an offense they thought she was going to commit, not that she had committed any offense. But then the fact of the matter is that you still have today, the National Assembly is predominantly male, and you have to know what to do. And maybe I'll end up here. Then when I take questions, I'll know whether there's something. I'll know what to say. One thing that we need to do to recognize in this assembly, 10th assembly, is the fact that the governance and the presidency, more than the previous assemblies, will decide and determine what is going to happen. And so whatever advocacy, whatever fine languages we have, whatever messages that we have, if you do not convince the presidency and the governors, you are not going to get any deal, because the National Assembly that we have today is not like the 7th Assembly, it's not like the 8th Assembly. It is an assembly that had strings attached to them, and you need to talk to the people who pull the strings. I think this will be okay for now until...
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shawulu. I'd like to bring in Nkiru to give a little more clarity on this bill. But before that, I just want to respond to some of the messages we've seen here, and also let you know that you could send in your questions. I've seen some questions directed at Honorable Shawulu. We'll come to them later. Send in your questions, fill the forms as requested by the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center here. And also those asking for the bill, the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, the PLAC has posted the bill on the question and answer page. So you could go there and find the bill and the bill analysis as well. The survey findings will also be shared to everyone as well, and you can find that. And Kira, please.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. What question am I meant to answer now?
A little more clarity on the provisions of the bill.
Oh, okay. So the bill proposes amendment to sections of the Constitution where legislative seats are created. That's sections 48, 49, and 91. So for the Senate, it's proposing one additional seat per state. That's 36 states, and then for the FCT, that's 37. So at the end, if it passes, we'll have 37 additional women senators. Then it's also proposing the same for the House of Reps. That's another 37. So if you add 2, that's 74. Then at the state level, it's proposing 3 seats per state. And if you add that up, that's 108. So if you add the proposed 74 seats at the federal level to the 108 being proposed for the state assemblies, the total amount is 182. And the current version of the bill, tweaked the earlier version in Ninth Assembly. In Ninth Assembly, the proposal was for there to be 2 women senators per state for the House of Reps. So it was longer. Sorry, it was more. If for those who were involved in the advocacy at that time, you remember that women were asking for 111 seats at the federal level. So the reason why this was reduced was, because of the cost of governance concerns that came up, having to, should I say, increase the numbers of legislators in the National Assembly. People were worried about the financial and cost implications, and that was why we did a cost-benefit analysis. So if you read our analysis, which we posted, I think I will share the link, read the cost-benefit analysis. And I encourage everyone to read it because it's really evidence-based. We got, it was done by a group of people who had worked in National Assembly. We kind of got information on, how much, to kind of get a ballpark figure on how much to cost. And our finding is that it won't even be up to 1% of the national budget to add these seats. But I think it's also important, in advocacy to stress that this is a temporary measure because some people are worried that this could turn into it can turn into a ceiling for women. And I think I also had concern from one of the speakers that, it could lead to a situation where, that's the only seat that women occupy. But the bill specifically states that these seats do not prevent women from contesting for the general or open seats. So if a woman feels she wants to go for the regular constituency seats, she can contest for that. If she wants to run for these women-only seats, she can contest for that. And I think another unique feature of this particular bill is the method of election, because there have been arguments about tokenism and merit. And I think that also came through in the survey where, those who oppose it raise this issue of merit, or they prefer merit-based. But the thing is that can we really talk about merits in a system that is skewed? Look at the nominations in our political parties. In the last election cycle, there were more than 1,600 pre-election matters and this is just on nominations alone. After the elections, we had over 1,200 post-election petitions. And for me, I think that says a lot about our electoral process, about how people are nominated and how even though politicians don't even trust the process. So when you have a system like that, and you have groups that are marginalized, what countries do is that they look for deliberate measures to help fill that gap. So this bill has helped to address that by states, by providing for, should I say, a sort of a sunset clause. So the whole idea is like to run for 16 years and then it to be reviewed. So it doesn't, just remain in the Constitution forever. That's one. And then secondly, is, like I mentioned, is the mood of the women getting in. So there have been talk about whether women should be nominated. So in countries that run reserve seats, the methods are actually different. So in India, for instance, India uses what they call rotating districts. So what they do is that in every election cycle, they reserve 1/3. This is the lower chamber, the lower chamber in India. They reserve 1/3 for women. In the next election cycle, it moves to the next 1/3. And then in the third election cycle, it moves to the last 1/3. So what that happens is that every constituency kind of, it rotates. So every constituency gets to, get reserved for women. So, but in Nigeria, that's, from our work and our engagement, that is going to be a challenge because nobody wants their constituency reserved, because if you reserve existing constituencies for women, of course, the question is going to be, locking men out of electoral competition. So that's why this additional seats proposal came in. That is what Kenya is doing. That is the model that Tanzania is doing. That is the model that Uganda is using. In Tanzania, I think the parties actually nominate the women. But in Uganda, I think in Kenya, the women actually contest. So for those who are worried about merits, that was the bill's way of addressing it. The women have to contest, they are not to be nominated by political parties. Yeah, they will still go through their own internal party nomination. So for instance, all parties are supposed to present their own female candidate for the state. So it means they will still have to go through normal candidate nominations, because if you look at the language of the bill, it says that the woman shall be elected in accordance with the provisions of, of the law regulating elections. So it means if this passes, we still have to default to normal candidate nominations process. So each party will present their female candidate. However, that woman has to actually contest and she has to run. And she actually has to do a lot of work, because in Kenya, we were in Kenya recently for a study tour, and the women representative actually did more campaign. Because it was a woman's seat, they had a larger field to cover in terms of building constituency support. So it's actually, I don't know, it's really not a handout. People think it's a handout, but it's actually a lot of work. And there's a lot of resourcing. So anybody who thinks that women are just going to be handed this on a platter of gold, honestly, I don't think they really understand. Because if you really pay attention to where it has worked, those seats are actually fiercely contested, because every political party, it's an incentive for political parties, because it means you are getting an additional legislative seats, or you're getting one plus one or plus two or whatever in the National Assembly. And we all know that National Assembly numbers matter when it comes to votes. So while the woman is primarily representing, the interests of women, she's also a member of a party. She's also going there to represent the interests of her, of that state, as a woman legislator. So, yes, I hope this kind of addresses this whole concerns about it not being merit. It is in places where it works, it is very, very fiercely contested, and some women don't even get in. But the overall benefits is that it helps women, it helps prep women, it helps them build political networks, it helps them gather resources, because right now, most of the factors preventing women from getting in includes, money, finance, they don't have political networks, that support base, helps them build. Yes. So in Kenya, you've had women who have been able to transit from the women's seats to regular constituency seats. So I think it's important to actually really understand the intricacies, because even in our work, while we've seen people who really support this bill, and Dr. Chike mentioned that in his presentation, the support for women inclusion is actually overwhelming. And I think that is that's really a very strong opportunity that we shouldn't let go in this 10th Assembly. A lot of people believe women should be, they should have decision-making power, but it's the how. So I think in pushing this bill, we need to understand and sell the mechanism, and not just say, oh, we're supporting this bill. Some people don't understand the mechanism. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, like the Honorable said, even the legislators, they have to understand how it works. I have spoken to some legislators, like, okay, what's the mechanics? What's the constituency going to represent? How is she going to be nominated? So I think we as advocates need to understand the nuts and bolts, and not just telling people to just support, so that when they go into the chamber on that day of voting, they are making an informed decision and they are voting because they really understand, not because, oh, I really don't know what this thing is talking about and I don't understand
Okay.
how. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nkiru. There are questions here, but that would be after we hear from Esther Ijeaku, because she's to speak on perhaps strategies, to further enhance the communication of this bill for unified messaging among advocacy groups. I think I've seen one of the participants here ask how they as participants in this webinar can propagate this gospel even better. So let's hear from Esther, and then we'll begin to take questions and comments.
Thank you, Terry. I think I'll just jump on some of the comments I've already made, because I kind of touched on my topic earlier on when I talked about the findings in the research that kind of give us a steer about channels, that's radio, TV, whether word of mouth or Twitter, depending on who you're trying to reach. Because I think that a lot of advocates are here, and thank you for the question, for the person that already sent in the question. We all have different groups that we're working with or we're targeting. So it's important to find out where the people we're targeting are, the older people, what media you can find them, or where they're interested in sourcing their information. But Nkiru said something about the opportunities that exist. How do we leverage these opportunities? How do we convert them as individuals or as groups? Well, I'm speaking from the perspective of effective communication. And I think simply we all know how we communicate with our different groups, but there are key success factors that I think are worth mentioning that we should be mindful of when we go out and we communicate. Fundamentally, and I think every speaker that has come up has said it, you have to know what the bill is about. It's not enough to support the idea. We have to know what the provisions are and be able to answer. I think Honorable, when he was talking about targeting legislators, what are the provisions? They will ask questions. Do we have the answers to those questions? That's one critical thing. And then there has to be consensus around the bill, an agreement that this bill deserves our support, and this is the bill that we're supporting, the EHB 1349. And that way we can coordinate. If there's no consensus, there will be no coordination. Even when we try to coordinate, the messaging will come out different, or we will not be speaking with one voice or sharing the same messages as we speak. Another key point is the visibility of correct information. We have to amplify our dissemination of not just the contents of the bill, but why it is important, how it will benefit, and then address misconceptions. A lot of times when we focus on what the benefits are and we lose touch, and those are some of the warnings that we had from Honorable, that he said, okay, so you might get some people that it's not that they're not aware, but they're just not convinced. We have to be able to address either misconceptions or other perspectives that do not quite align with what we're trying to achieve. Be prepared. Another key thing to be mindful of is the visibility of sponsors. So in change management, one of the key things is you may have a brilliant idea, but if the person that is behind it or the supporters of that person are not seen to be speaking for it loudly and clearly, then it is highly likely that it's not going to go through. So it's identifying gatekeepers, leaders, whether religious leaders, community leaders, traditional leaders, leaders within government, the governors, this was already mentioned, need to be engaged to understand why we need this passed and how they can come in to support it. And when they are seen, it sends a clear signal to everyone who's watching that maybe, just maybe, I should give this more attention and my support at the end of the day. Another thing is nuanced messaging. So we can't have like a one size fits all. We've heard if you listen back to this discussion that we've had, we have been given very specific messaging for different groups of people, whether it's the governors or the legislators or our leaders or women's groups, or depending on the North or the South, the context in which we are working should shape the kind of information. A one size fits all will not work. And in doing that, we have to identify what's in it for me. What's in it for the person that you're trying to influence and you're trying to gain support from. And when we identify it and we're able to communicate it, it will help move things and that momentum along. I think another thing is, and I think Honorable said it in passing, he said it's not just about going to the National Assembly to protest. There's time for protesting and there's time for the non-confrontational approach. And I personally think that this calls for dialogue. This calls for discussion. This calls for a non-confrontational approach. It calls for being able to express our perspective and our sides and what we want clearly without resorting to any confrontation. That way we're able to win support. So maybe just because I'm kind of looking at the time, I would leave it here, but I just thought I should reel out some I think factors of that can help improve our chances of success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's quickly take comments and questions now. Louisia Ekomu Gwongese says she's from Echoes of Women in Africa Initiatives at those states. She appreciates the organizers of this webinar. The extra seats for women is what we need now to overcome the discrimination against women in decision-making positions. And Michael Babajide has sent in questions to Honorable Remamde Shawulu. It says, the first question, Honorable, if you've taken notes, he has 3 questions. I don't know if you read all the questions. First is, how does a Nigerian know the location of the constituency office of their lawmaker? Is there a website to visit or a map to study or a person to call to locate and find out to know the location of the said constituency office?
I can see all his questions. So maybe I just take all of them.
Okay, that's fine.
The questions on the platform Q&A. The first question, how about knowing the office of legislators? All the phone numbers, the telephone numbers of all the members of the National Assembly. Sorry, my video is off. The phone numbers of all members of National Assembly are available online, and you can call them or call their staff and you'll be able to get the address. But I am not sure there's a website that a map that has all of them. That could be the responsibility of one of the civil society groups in Nigeria. Actually, it's a task that one of the civil society groups can pick up and implement to provide a website for contacts for members of National Assembly. And then the second question is, what is the immediate and remote cause of civic literacy in Nigeria? Actually, this needs to be studied. And let me make some comments here. It's in Nigeria, in 1983, for those who are adults, we had a problem in Nigeria, the same problem that we had in Sudan. In Nigeria, we had the challenge, what they call austerity measures that were introduced by the government. Prices of bread rose, and there were some episodic protests around the streets in Nigeria. Sudan increased the price of bread by a kobo or something. I've forgotten the denomination that was used at that time. And the government did not, the protests that came up, the government did not last long because the protests were sustained. And but that is basically the problem that we have in Nigeria. Nigerians are not interested in fighting for their rights beyond the immediate things that they want. And all the protests they've had are very episodic, and most legislators will tell you, and even local government chairmen, avoid going to their homes because people line up there because they are looking for things for themselves. When you go to other climes, the other time when you go to other climes in Africa, it's basically the same, but in in Europe, and so people don't go to their legislators for money to pay school fees or to marry or to do naming ceremony, and that keeps the legislators on their toes because they know that they have to behave. The third question is, how do we ensure that lawmakers who speak in favor of a bill, the voting is usually publicized and the records are there. If you go to National Assembly, you will see, if you look for the Hansard are available. I don't know whether you need to buy or get free. In other parts of the world, it's free. If you get the Hansard, you will see how they voted, especially votes that are not voice vote. You will see who voted and who voted for what and who did not vote for what. And the records are there. So if you are interested, if you go to the records department of the Sergeant at Arms, I think, or the office of the clerk of the House of Reps or the Senate, you will be able to see the records. You'll be able to get the records of how people voted. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next question now. Solomon Dapa says, my question is a simple one. The lady that was suspended on perceived, oh, no, that's not for this conversation, but that's Adekunle Lukman Adefulan says, I agreed why the bill is important and it needs to be popularized and clear some related misconceptions around the bill. We need to showcase the relevance to the 21st century realities. Umar Salman says, between having this special seats or having an independent candidacy system, which can produce better outcomes on time? That's his first question. And secondly, having the special seats contested through the political parties may undermine the whole essence of the bill with the current political system of cross-carpeting with no consequences in our parliament. I think Honorable Shawulu and Esther can respond to this, whoever wants to go first. You're muted, Honorable.
Let me go first.
Okay.
I agree with the second part of his question that I think that what should have happened have been to follow the proportional representation scheme so that the parties nominate people to fill those seats in accordance with the number of seats they win in the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly, as the case may be. Asking women to contest this election through their political parties, in my opinion, also undermines the whole essence. And I know that I agree with Umar that having them contest the election, I have contested elections several times. I know the hassle, I know the challenge, and I think that if you are going to do that, if you want this system to succeed, we need to just, in my opinion, I hope it's not coming late, we just need to do proportional representation. The parties nominate women from deprived constituencies in accordance with the number of members that they have in each of the chambers that they're nominating people. And in that way, the women being nominated will not be facing the challenge of going through the same process that we say undermines women to be able to get elected into special seats. And then as to the first question of Umar, between having this, I believe that the independent candidacy is a good system, and it does not, we don't have to, they can go together. Actually, in my opinion, they can go together. We did vote for it in the Ninth Assembly. There was at the committee level, and even though they brought some provisions, amendments were proposed that actually undermined it, namely that you needed, the initial proposed amendment was that you needed to have up to a certain percentage, some said 70% of members of registered voters in your constituency sign your nomination form before INEC puts your name on the ballot paper. And we did say, come on, what is the percentage of people who come out to vote in any election? Just about the last election, presidential election, was 27% or so of people that came out to vote. Then you are asking someone who wants to come out as an independent candidate to go and get 70% to come and sign. That was like undermining the whole proposal. The second one is that if a party is sponsoring you to contest the election, you only need about 20 nominees. So where will you want an independent candidate or the candidate to go and get hundreds of thousands of people to sign his nomination paper? Well, the counter argument was that if you open it up, too many people will want to contest, and then you have too many names on the ballot papers. The ballot paper may run into several sheets. Yeah, but you could say that, okay, you can have maybe 1% or 2% of people in your constituency nominate, registered voters nominate you. That will be sufficient. And that may align with best practices around the world, where you have a manageable number of people nominate an independent candidate. But to now discriminate against the independent candidate by saying that you should get 70 or 50% of voters to sign his nomination form will not do. Well, it failed. It didn't go through, but it will be a good idea if it goes through.
All right.
And if it goes through, it may help even the women who are having difficulties going through the parties.
All right, Esther, you want to respond to that, especially the aspect that talks about comparing an independent candidacy system and the special seats, which is more important?
Well, I think he has gotten some response, part of the response, but what I can add is I don't think they're the same. The issue that we're talking about and what we're trying to address is gender inequality. That is a systemic problem. So independent candidacy can be that you don't buy into the mandate, or not the mandate, what do you call it? The ideals of that political party. That is why you are not coming out on their platform, or you're not completing on their platform. You have your own personal objectives or your mandate that you want to go there and fulfill. But here, what we're trying to address, and it's like comparing apples and oranges, is that there's a systemic issue of gender inequality that screens out women. If we go the way we're going, we can almost predict that right now we're at less than 10%. It's possible next time round we even be below 5%. So we're doing something and we're trying to address that issue to fix it. So I wouldn't compare both. I don't mind the independent candidacy because it's a right. And I know the Honorable has given ideas on how this can be done to minimize costs and ensure that people who can get the following as serious candidates make it onto the ballot, but they're not quite the same. And this, if you ask whether this is which is more important, I think this is quite critical, because women are 50% of the population. This is just fact. Not because I'm a woman, but it's just fact. We're 50% of the population, and deserve to be seen and to be heard in the legislature and where decisions are being made that affect their lives?
Absolutely. So Tukura Bege says, I support the contributions raised by the Skill Hub principal consultant. My contribution is that I know that all the legislators have those who they respect the most. Why can't we try to do power mapping so that those people can be informed about the special seats to help influence these legislators? I think this is one of those aspects of expanding the conversation that you were trying to talk about, I believe.
Yes. I think that has actually, at least at, should I say, organizational level, I know that that has been done. Several organizations have done power mapping. We have done ours. So these are tools that advocacy organizations use internally for their campaign. It's part of our campaign strategy, even if it's not something that you publish. But we have those meetings, we have those conversations of, okay, who do we need to talk to? At least we are very happy that at the National Assembly level, there is already a high level commitment. I think that's a big thing. And Honorable Rima actually noted that compared to the past assembly, that this assembly, is very open on women inclusion. So for someone who is interested, that's a good place, a good place to start, even though you also have to be careful not to preach to the converted, because at the end of the day, while high-level institutional support is very key, the leadership of both chambers, they are very influential. At the end of the day, they are not going to have more than one vote. That's if they even vote at all. We have 469 people. So when it comes to this special seats bill, yes, the power mapping is key for building this consensus and this support. But for us working on legislative advocacy, on that day of the election, everybody is king when it comes to constitutional review. Their votes nobody's votes is superior to the other. So, but in terms of power mapping, yes, that's ongoing. I've talked about the leadership. Then at our own, should I say, state level, your own rep, you can start with your own, should I say, networks. In the survey, they talked about family and friends, and surprisingly, it even had more respondents said they heard about it from family and friends than even from social media, and I found that very interesting. So it means there's power within our own social and personal networks. So even in the power mapping, yes, we can have the high level people, the politicians, but people we know, our friends, family members. You don't know who knows someone. It can even be in your church, in your place of worship. So yes, I think it's a very important tool for engagement. I don't know, maybe Esther can throw more light on it, but it's definitely something that we're doing. And I know that a lot of organizations are actually doing things on it. I know there are organizations and advocates that are also trying to pull in celebrities. They're trying to pull in influencers, social media influencers, and trying to pull them in. And even people, professionals like women in politics, women in business, these are the different stakeholder groups that we feel, yes. And then of course, I know the Governor's Wives Forum is also a key stakeholder group. Honorable Rima mentioned the executive and the governors, and I know that when the House had an event last year, the president of the Governor's Wives Forum, I think that's the First Lady of Kwara State, she was there and she made a commitment. But of course, with politics, there are competing interests. I think it's very important to actually mention this. There's a constitutional review process going on. There are several issues on the agenda. There's state police, there's local government reforms, there is should I say federalism, legislative powers. Special seats is one of the many issues. There's even state creation on the agenda. There are so many things. So let us not rest and think this, yes, there's momentum. People are talking about this. The same way we are pushing, there are people who are pushing for an additional state to be created, even though we don't know if that's going to happen. But there are people, local government autonomy, electoral reforms, judiciary. The judiciary is really also pushing for election-related judiciary reforms. So for politicians, there are so many competing issues on the agenda. So I think we should keep that in mind. Yes, thank you.
Very good point. Very good point you've raised. Supporting the position by Honorable Shawulu that the boss needs to be as loud as the not too young to run bill was, because pressure must be mounted. The louder the boss, the easier it is to do the responsibility of ensuring that this bill sees the light of day. You had mentioned the need to include influencers, celebrities, and all that. Those ones have followers who would escalate the conversation. So it's very important. Let's respond to some messages have been responded to. I can see that Chiamaka Chinwindo had asked, why 4 cycles if there are 3 senatorial districts per state and you intend to rotate? It sounds like the bill is robust. My suggestion will be to be more creative with messaging and strict terms of this bill to garner public support. And PLAC had responded saying that the bill is not rotational. It says India's method, which was mentioned, is what is rotational. The proposed method is additional seats, an additional layer of seats for women only added to existing seats. Umar Salman is asking this question. He says, I believe this special seats bill is a temporary measure to close the gaps of women underrepresentation in our parliaments. I believe the sunset clause of 16 years for review will pose a great threat to the existing lawmakers who are going to be voting on this bill. Why some will logically believe that after 16 years, which is 4 electoral cycles, the amendment would have increased women representation, and those currently occupying those seats will be part of the review. Therefore, they won't support that the special seats be moved or reduced. Maybe the review should be limited to 8 years. That's 2 electoral cycles. That's his opinion. Honorable Shawulu, what are your thoughts on this from a legislative standpoint?
I don't think it's a legislative matter, it's a political matter anyway, because as it is, if you have a privilege today and somebody comes and says that he wants to hack down the privilege, you will fight against it. And in any case, the 4 years, the 4 cycles means that if there are 3, there are some local governments, of course, that is some federal constituencies that have more local government areas and core issues will come out in future that, okay, we've had women from this area represent, and where is it that is coming to our turn? You want to remove it. So I think we may have to, well, it's a bill and maybe it's a constitutional amendment, maybe the ANEC, a provision could be made to ensure that there are more inclusive, more provisions that will make it more inclusive and ensure that it reaches as many areas as possible. Because if you just have 4, if you just have 4 election seasons, and then you have 1 Senate from every local, from every senatorial, the states have 3 senatorial districts. It means that you have to be strict that if in this election cycle, if it goes to senatorial district in the north, the next one, it should go to the one in at the center, or it should go to the one at the, so in Nigeria, like every political jurisdiction is complicated. And in making laws, you may, especially the constitution, you might not be able to be very clear on everything that needs to be done, but a provision needs to be made so that one senatorial district in those 4 election cycles does not produce the woman senator that is going to come. That will generate its own problem too. So it will depend on the provisions that are made for normal electoral process, no constitutional amendments that can tweak with the practice in such a way that every place it is actually inclusive, not that it will increase the challenges of of excluding others that could happen. Because when you are talking about women being at the center of being excluded. You have to also know that in the society, there are other groups that could be also excluded. And the groups and the women from those groups that are excluded may suffer double jeopardy if provisions are not made in such a way that this thing moves around in the 4 election cycles. It could be commanded by, or you want one woman to contest election as if she's a governor in all the local governments in the state, so that he will come and represent, she will come to the National Assembly to represent a woman from that senatorial district, from that state. That is a difficult question that I think can be worked out.
Okay, all right. Amir Mohammed said much needs to be done in the awareness of adopted method of the implementation when this bill is signed. Says, I'm sure lots of people did not understand the terminology of additional seats. And lastly, I suggest in translating the major propositions of this bill in the 3 national languages for better understanding. I think the comments from the comments here, we could clearly see that it's aligning with the purpose of this webinar in proposing how we can propagate this gospel even further. Michael Babajide says, I have scanned through the bill and I love its simplicity and its remedial impact on the ground now. I wish all the sponsors of the bill the very best and hope the lawmakers that will speak in favor of the bill before camera do not go behind to vote against the same bill. Says, while we wait for the bill to see the light of legislative day, I would suggest that the civic and ethical education of women is hugely invested in, so that we don't add to the existing problems currently being caused by men in power. I'm sure PLAC's taking note of that. There's something else here that PLAC should take note of. What is PLAC and the EU doing to support faith-based organizations and creative organizations who can take the message of the bill to the grassroots in the medium manner and language that the people will understand? That's from Chinelo Chikelu. So that's for Nkiru and Esther.
Okay, let me go first. What is PLAC and EU doing to support faith-based organization? So they are part of our stakeholder group in terms of the engagements that we're having. You know, I had mentioned, someone talked about power mapping, and we actually have a campaign strategy on this bill that we're currently implementing. And this webinar is part of it, you know, which is kind of getting a sense of the level of understanding of the bill. So as part of our ongoing engagement, faith-based organizations, you know, are part of groups that we're engaging, and I will continue to engage ahead of the voting. Creative organizations, that's actually an interesting additional suggestion, which, you know, we are taking on board and will add to our list of organizations. But I know that we're working with media. We have media partners, and we also have partners who are also focusing on the media, who are helping to break down this message. In July, when the zonal public hearings happened, a lot of NGOs were at the different states, at the different zones. And I know, you know, there was awareness campaign at that level. But of course, you know, from what we've seen from this survey, we need to do more work. So we're going to be taking lessons to improve on what we have done so far.
Okay, Esther, you have something to add?
Sure. I think one of the points that was raised that got my attention is about ensuring fairness through the process of equity. So we're pushing to ensure that there's a level playing field, but also through that process, looking at the details to ensure fairness. And then for the preparation of women, I think a lot has been said about it already, that women have been receiving trainings. In fact, for me, every election cycle, when I worked on projects, it used to frustrate me because it's almost like you can see how it's going to go. They receive training, their capacities are strengthened, there are a lot of promises, and then the opportunity is not there. So that frustration is there, but in terms of competence and women who can do it, I think there's a pool that exists, and it's just for people to know that this opportunity is real opportunity, like you're competing, you know that you're going to make it to the ballot and you will receive the support from the system and the structure that exists. Then lastly, about supporting entertainment, I think a lot of barriers that we like underlying a lot of what the resistance that we have is a lot of bias and perceptions that people have that comes from whether your religion or your culture, your background, that needs to be addressed. And one way of kind of latching on that is to make sure that we don't forget leaders in the faith-based organizations, and making sure that we have advocates also within those institutions and the entertainment industry. I know that when you talk about what is it that they are not called sponsors, when you are representing a product or a company like Globe, they are paid a lot of money, but of course we cannot pay a lot of money, but we can get buy-in enough for celebrities and entertainers to take ownership of the bill and actually promote it because they believe in the provisions and what we seek to achieve. A lot can be done, but I think the more awareness there is, the more likely we will get more hands on board to push and strengthen the momentum to ensure success at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me get Adekunle Lukman. I think his hand has been up.
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate PLAC for this. And I want to align myself with what Esther has been emphasizing around systemic issue that need to be addressed when we are talking about this bill, which is critical. And I think as a nation, we need to be deliberate if we really want to get it appropriately. And my second comment will be to the Honorable. I want to thank him for his time also to analyze the issues around it. But my comment, which is still part of that systemic issue that Esther raised, when Honorable mentioned that members of National Assembly opened constituency office and he or she hardly see members of his constituent to engage him. I think National Assembly members also need to shift from their approach to their constituents and also to let them know their major role beyond the method of that we are used to in the country, whereby we believe if you're a member of National Assembly, your role is to execute projects rather than to facilitate. I think the environment also allowed that because I have a representative in National Assembly or state assemblies, if I want to do naming ceremony, I have to go to the person for support. If I want to do wedding, so I think it's part of the systemic issue that we are having that has made us to forget that members of National Assembly have specific role apart from representation. How many National Assembly members go back to their constituency and give analysis of what they have done so far in terms of number of motions, number of bills supported, or number of town hall meetings engaged in, beyond showcasing, facilitating school projects or health projects. So it is high time our political office holder should shift mind from that practice and engage through coordinated town hall meeting, either quarterly, monthly, or twice in a year, whereby they'll be able to show.
I think we have lost audio from Adekunle there. Anyways, I think we could take closing statements now from panelists, and then I'll hand over to Nkiru to wrap up. But before then, let me take this message from Kenichi Christine Wakile. She says that there seems to be little or no reference to university undergraduates, secondary school students, or members in the diaspora community. If the goal is to make every Nigerian own and sustain support for this bill, the core message should include every Nigerian from the greatest to the least. I think PLAC has also noted that. So as we wrap up, I'll take closing statements from Honorable Shawulu and then go to Esther.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to engage here. Well, the last person that was speaking, just a small reference to what he was saying, and the issue of National Assembly members holding meetings and the rest of them. I have personal experiences about meetings, and many other people can tell you about experiences that they have. The Nigerian populace will need to be working up. It's not just about National Assembly members, about everywhere. People are not being held accountable, and when people want to make themselves accountable, the room for their accountability is not there. I held a meeting sometimes with highly educated people from my home, and when we were talking, they did ask me, many ask, say, what are they, is it bills that they are going to, English language that they are going to eat? Is it, they are talking about motion, is it motions that you are going to eat? And this is a scenario that I think eventually we hope, as democracy proceeds, we'll be able to resolve them, because people need to be held accountable. And everywhere in the world, politicians are not highly regarded. And the reason why some politicians in some countries may be doing better is simply because there are groups and agencies that will be out there fighting for them. And we've noticed, if you look at it, we've noticed of recent where people who get convicted or are supposed to be tried for criminal activities, people from people from their homes hold rallies for them. They are heroes. You are a thief only if you are not a thief, no matter what you have stolen, and you are from my area. You are a thief if you are not from my area. And so that attitude, if we change it, things will be better. But I think in conclusion, this has been, it's a good thing. And I think there are prospects that as we improve our systems, people will also know that every public position they have is a trust that has been given to them. And the trust is your right to betray it or to get it to work. We need to have, like I said in a podcast some days ago, areas and jurisdictions where you have freedom, where people operate freely, are generally more peaceful than where rights of people are trampled upon. And if you even check through history, you will see that the areas that have really developed, the areas that people are running to around the world, are areas where freedoms are allowed, which is why if you check, a very high number of women in positions, political positions in Europe, are being held by women today. And it's because the freedom that they have there permeates into all spheres of life. It's my hope that as we do engage, we'll have a system that will make every group that feels that it is not included become included in the political and governance process of Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Esther, please.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been quite an engaging conversation, and the questions and comments have really pushed it further or further enriched some of the perspectives that I had even before coming in. I think just to conclude, I would say that usually when we have a bill that is a gender bill, it's assumed to be a women's bill and therefore a women's problem. But it's critical to take away the fact that this is a societal issue and society will benefit from including women in the legislative houses, whether at the national level or the sub-national level. And for each and every person that has come across or is in this webinar, one of the findings right off the bat in the beginning was that a lot of young people got their information through word of mouth. It was pretty high. So the more we know, the more we talk about as advocates, and the more we get people on board and thinking more and providing or giving their support to the bill as we go along. Then lastly, for organizations that are going to be programming around the bill, it's important to have a nuanced approach, to have a plan, and because the resources are not unlimited, whether it is financial or it's time or it's effort, it's not unlimited. It's critical to map, to identify who we're talking to, and to tie in to the core messaging that we're trying to get out, particularly around the provisions and the benefits of the bill, HB 1349. I really appreciate the opportunity to sink my teeth into this and look forward to when we'll celebrate, hopefully, on the passing of the bill. Thank you to PLAC, and it's been quite an honor, Honorable and Terry.
Thank you very much, Esther. Kira, I think I could let you wrap this up, but before you do that, I just want to also say that it's been an honor to be part of this. I think this is the second webinar that I'm hosting on the special seats bill, and we have a different set of panelists, and now we have ideas on how to push forward this bill beyond borders, so to speak, and mount pressure on those who have the responsibility to pass it. So thank you to Esther, Ijeaku, and Honorable Ramande Shaulu. Also, thank you to Chike Mwagwa. Thank you very much as well. Nkiru.
All right. Thank you so much, Terry, for skillfully guiding this conversation and keeping the discussion engaging and focused. We're really grateful. So distinguished panelists, partners, participants, thank you so much, Honorable Rima, Esther. Thank you so much. And for our attendees, the participants, I thank each and every one of you for your time and for the questions and for your commitment to advancing women's political representation in Nigeria. So today's conversation has been rich. We have seen from the survey presented by Dr. Chike, okay, he's still here. Thank you, Dr. Chike Nwangu. That while awareness of the special seats bill is not where we want it to be and it's still growing, the good news is that there's strong public support for women in governance. So this is the foundation that we must build upon. We have also had clear messages from our panelists. Advocacy must be focused, communication must be sharp, efforts must be coordinated, that we should appeal to the honor and conscience of legislators. We should explain to them how the bill works and, pay attention to the implementation. Above all, we must now channel this momentum we have into what really matters. And that is citizens' demands that translate into legislative passage and presidential assent. So I'm just going to leave with 5 takeaways because someone asked, is there going to be like next steps or action plan? So I just highlighted 5. 1, disseminate findings. So we're going to be disseminating the survey results. We'll put it in a concise and digestible format. So please disseminate the findings widely through your platforms. Then secondly, is to sharpen advocacy, understand and explain mechanics. This is very, very key. This is very important for all of us to use clear, unified messaging to explain this bill. 1, it is a complementary measure. It's not meant to supplant other things, political readiness and preparation. So this is a complementary temporary measure to expand representation of women. And we have to ensure that advocates, the media, and citizens clearly understand the formula, because at the end of the day, this is actually a formula. This is what it is. When we talk about electoral system, it's just like mathematics, it's a formula. So we all have to understand the formula being proposed for allocating the special seats, so there is no confusion or misinformation. And then thirdly is legislative engagement. We all have persons representing us in the Senate and the House of Reps. So we have to target them, reach out to them, some of them on social media, some of them are not on social media, some of them, we may see them in our communities. So it's, I encourage everyone, to sustain follow-up and also highlight the high-level political support coming from the leadership of the National Assembly who has made these commitments. We need to hold them to these commitments that this bill is going to pass. Then fourthly is to mobilize citizens ourselves. We have to encourage each other to turn our awareness into direct demands on our representatives and political stakeholders and decision makers. And then finally is coordination with partners. Some of us work for NGOs or sales, so some of us do not. We have different, it's a mix of participants on this webinar. So you don't have to have like a huge platform. You don't have to have an organization. You can align with a civil society organization, a women group, an advocacy group that is already working on this issue. There are several of us. This will help avoid duplication, pool efforts, and amplify the momentum. So these are my PLAC's 5 key asks and takeaways. And then finally, I don't think we can wrap up this webinar without thanking the European Union for their support. I don't know if Laulu is still here. Laulu or Laumi, thank you so much for your goodwill remarks at the start of the webinar. We commend all our partners and participants who continue to keep this bill alive in the public and on the legislative agenda. Let us all leave here not only encouraged by today's discussion, but also determined to take these next steps, to push harder, to speak louder, and to stay united until this bill is passed. So thank you once again, and I wish you all a pleasant day. Housekeeping, please go to the chats. Please sign the attendance form. That's one. We have 3 links. One, the attendance form. We have an evaluation form, and then of course there's a payment form for data reimbursements. So if you go to the chat box, you see the 3. Those are the last 3 forms: the attendance, evaluation, payment form for data reimbursement. Please kindly complete. And then there are some people are still typing questions in chat. We have to go. But please, you can send email. I put in PLAC's email address. If you have any questions, I have questions about how to engage or how they can engage or work with PLAC, please send an email to info@placng.org. You can send us an email. Someone is saying engage political parties. We have to end the webinar, but we are available for further conversation. So please send us an email. Our phone lines work on our website, www.placng.org. Go to our socials. You can reach out to us. And we're happy to take the conversation further beyond this webinar. So once we close, we will leave the chat open so that people can access the link to the payment forms. Thank you so much, all. And
thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.